knowledge is power, the people who have all the power right now are the guys that are really fucking good with computers. It's probably been that way for a while.
I wouldn't say knowledge in and of itself is composed of, it has to be composed of things that are true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the only case in which power is actually, can be considered, part of truth is if you're pointing to the ultimate power.
God?
Yes. Everything subsidiary to that is an illusion. And it completely and wholly depends on God's will.
Philly, it's been a while, brother. Give me a cheers.
Cheers.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah, happy belated Thanksgiving.
You've been with me through a lot. You've seen a lot of different studios, and you've seen a lot of different versions of me now.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've recorded since I became a dad.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Man, I still want to do a whole nother podcast to just talk about like just what a change that is to you. And I know you and I have talked about you wanting to have kids someday, and I really wish and pray for you that you get to experience that, because I think you'd be an excellent dad. And I really did. And I honestly believe that it is God's biggest gift that he can give a man is fatherhood.
Yeah. And
there's something about
biggest transition that you can go through in life.
There's something about having a daughter too. She's just like the sweetest little girl.
Oh yeah.
Too, At first I thought I really wanted a son, but now I'm like, nah, fuck that. Like I love being a girl dad, and if we're lucky enough to have another kid, if we even try for it, we'll kind of see where life takes us. Like I would not be upset if I just had an army of daughters.
Yeah,
I really wouldn't.
Well, and in our modern society here in the United States, it might be preferable because, I mean, we're aligning everything against developing men.
Right.
So
that's true.
I mean, you have a little boy today.
He might not even think he's a boy.
I mean, honestly, that could turn into the biggest nightmare in so many people's lives to raise a child that is just that the entire environment that they're raised in is diametrically opposed to them becoming what they are.
Right.
It's scary. But so is she fussy, or is she quiet?
She's a mix of both.
Okay.
She's not one of those babies that you hear about, like your friends tell you about, was just like, it seems just like hell. Like the type of babies that make you not want to have kids. Yeah. The ones that never sleep. You talk to their mom and dad. They have so much fucking, it's just scarecrow eyes, like eyelids underneath them. Looks like they haven't slept in weeks, and all they do is just complain about their baby. She's not like that.
Yeah.
She has her rough nights every now and then, but she also has her really good nights too.
That's good.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. Like anytime me or my fiance, we get frustrated, we're really tired with her, we just remind ourselves that we're going to miss this one day. Eventually she's going to get old. Mm-hmm. She's probably going to go through that phase of hating us, just like we all fucking do for the most part, and I'm going to miss those days where she's just dependent on us. Because like when she starts like crying or like hungry, wants something, I'm just like, I got you. I love being there for you.
Yeah.
You need me. You need me and I need you. I love that. And it's not going to be like that forever.
No.
So every time we get frustrated or stressed, we remind ourselves to just enjoy this while it lasts, and then it doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, because you'll blink and it'll be over.
Exactly. Dude, it's already been 3 months. It's going by really quick.
Jeez.
So I know.
Oh man.
So anyway, we're gonna do an episode called Dad Life here soon, but we'll talk about that soon enough. But I just want to give you a shout out. I appreciate you, and this is like our third different studio now, and you've been rocking with me for many years now, actually doing this podcast, and you've seen a lot of different versions of me, and you've been by my side with every single one. So thank you.
Oh, I'm really happy for you. I mean, you
got to come over and have dinner sometime and meet her.
Oh yeah. I mean, your arrival at this point is fairly unorthodox, but I'm really glad that the particular aspects of your situation have work themselves out the way they have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's obviously been really good for you.
Yeah, it has been. I have a lot to say about it, but like I said, we're gonna save it for a different day.
It's hard for me to believe that we actually met coming up on what, like 8 years ago?
God,
Because I was
probably
bartending.
about.
I mean, after I got to Williams, it was what?
No, it hasn't been 8 years because I'm 32.
Well, I've been at X Golf for 3.
24. So make me 24. I started working at Williams when I was mid 20s, maybe 24, 25 for sure. It might be close
It's
to
7 or 8.
Yeah,
I did
it
a
might
little
be
bit
getting
of
up there.
overlap hanging on through the first year at X Golf,
Mhm.
you know, and then by that next summer, it was just over. Now the place has reopened. Did you know?
What?
Somebody told me. I
Williams?
think that Williams is
No.
back. It's back open again.
No way.
I haven't been down there to check it out myself, but
Yeah. No way.
I kind of have just given up on that area.
Yeah.
The Minneapolis authorities have really, well, and St. Paul,
Mhm.
the entire Twin Cities area, basically the population center of Minnesota. It's almost completely dysfunctional now.
It's sad.
And you just see it everywhere. The numbers of people just milling around and doing nothing, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And it really makes me wonder. It's like, how in the world can any of this stuff continue to be held together when the only thing you can actually see increasing are public influences, the money they waste, and all sorts of know-nothing people doing nothing? That's not a good, that's an awful trifecta. And I don't know.
You should watch this documentary called The Fall of Minneapolis. You may have already seen it. It's on YouTube. I'll send you the
I
link.
may have seen a clip or two out of that.
It's pretty good. We'll have to do a whole podcast and have multiple conversations.
How far back does it go?
I don't know. I know it's about George Floyd. And the riots and all that
okay.
shit. So
Well, okay. So that's got several.
that's the whole focus is George Floyd and the riots. It doesn't really
it's the
talk
lead
about
up to
COVID.
George Floyd, and then from then till now, and you have to go back. You have to go all the way back to the beginning of Section 8 to really understand how the Twin Cities has done everything in its power to destroy itself ever since. It's so gross. We move on from that.
Yep. We move on for that. And real quick, I just want to say, you've seen a lot of different versions of me, and I've seen a lot of different versions of you. But one thing I've always admired, you've always been consistent with your desire to learn and just continuing to write, read, and seek out information. I feel like I still just learn more vocabulary every time I talk to you. I feel like it challenges me and makes me a better speaker, and makes me a better listener too, which is even more important. If you want to be good at talking, you got to be good at listening.
Absolutely.
The best debaters are the best listeners also.
Oh yeah. Because you see these guys if you watch a recording of a pair of guys up on a stage with a mediator in the center, and they're sitting at their tables, and they come up and they sit down. If you're not dialed in to what your opponent is delivering, you're gonna get destroyed.
Yep.
Because you have to be able to absorb that
and dissect it.
Yep. And come up with responses that can either demonstrate that it's incorrect or the flaws in it. And that's how you generate a productive back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Is being willing to say what's on your mind, and then also at the same time accept that other people might see flaws in it. And then you have to demand of anybody who makes a claim to a flaw that they can demonstrate the flaw. And that's usually where the people I'm trying to talk to about some of this stuff just fall short. Because it's almost inevitably either a majority position, not an argument, or arguing from authority, or I don't like that. And you know what? You don't like it doesn't.
That's not good.
That doesn't mean anything.
That's not good enough.
We all have preferences for things, and that's just a fact of life.
Well, that's enough appetizers to start the episode.
I appreciate that,
no,
man.
Thank you. I appreciate you, man.
I'm glad that that I actually kind of, I demonstrate some of that influence, because I mean, it's one of the things that I actually want to do.
Right.
I'm not very good at taking any of that and actually applying it in this infinite swamp of BS to make money.
That's what it's all about.
I'm not good at all at making money.
It's okay. Me neither.
You know what? I don't want to be.
Well, let's get into the main course of this podcast here. We're going to start it off with a little question here, and that's what's easier to believe? And Phil, I'll let you take it.
All right. And this was just something, I'm watching the infinite stream of clips and commentary, and it's just a lot of poor positions being taken all over the place. And I just these two things, I just aligned them against each other and just thought of this question. So, of these two things, which is easier to believe or to actually comprehend and know that it's true? And the first one being, people of different races always hate each other and must have an authority deliver regulation and limitations on everything you do in order to correct for that just innate hatred of the other.
Okay, so let me try to unpack that a little bit. To sum it up, white people hate black people hate white people, Asians hate Mexicans hate Puerto Ricans, and they need police or government to tell them how to get along with each other.
Well, not even tell them how to get along, but mandate their actions within the legal code.
With how they behave towards one another.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where you get all of this hate speech nonsense, and people just, it's a mess.
Got it. Well,
right?
I personally find that hard to believe.
It is. It's pretty,
I don't believe it. Sounds like bullshit.
It's pretty stupid. I mean, the earth wouldn't, the populations of the earth wouldn't be interacting the way they do right now if this were true. It's absolute nonsense, right? Then to juxtapose, this is what I put alongside that, because I think that this is a far more fundamental question that actually gives us something to chew on as far as what should people be thinking about or trying to do to actually, progress to a better future. Now, I believe this wholeheartedly, and this is the second question. The public sector, it's populated with thieves who make their own theft legal by using their power.
That sounds pretty easy to believe.
That's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Unpacking that, taxation is theft.
It is. I mean, just because you put a different label on something doesn't take away its substance.
First time I was really pissed about tax?
This is the first time you got a paycheck.
First time I got, it wasn't that early. First time I got a shit ton of overtime on a paycheck.
Oh boy, and
because I was under the impression that I was gonna make so much fucking money. I'm like, man, this check's gonna be fat. I had this is back when I was working at UPS and it was doing peak season, which is the day after Thanksgiving, the holidays. Anybody who works for UPS, FedEx, and these delivering companies, it's just fucking crazy, right?
Through this time of year, there's time and a half and double, and even on rare occasion, triple time.
Maybe on holidays.
And it's available from before Thanksgiving to after the new year, because they need so many people to get on the processing of all of this activity. So they don't have a choice.
Dude, I hit 40 hours by Wednesday, halfway through the day Wednesday. I was at 40 hours because I was working. I would help the guy who drives the brown trucks. They do this thing called driver's helper. Basically, they pick you up and he's like, all right, you take these 3 packages, you hit these houses on that side, I'm gonna take these ones, I'm gonna go this side. That's how much shit they gotta deliver. I'm like, okay. So I do that for 8 to 10 hours, maybe longer during the day. And then I'd go load the semi-trailers.
And then back to the warehouse and loading trucks.
And work that. So I had 40 hours by Wednesday, and I didn't make that much. At the time, I wasn't making that much, but I thought to me it was a lot.
Oh yeah.
I thought I had probably worked around 70 something hours.
Yep.
And I thought
And
I was going to
30
get the fattest fucking check.
30
And
something
I
hours
saw
of that was
how-
time and a half,
yes,
right?
and I saw how much extra money they take out from taxes because you worked overtime.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was really eye-opening. It's like, it's almost not even fucking worth it.
No, and that's by design. And you know
Really not.
who came up with all of these rules? Look, collectivists in the government and union leadership who convinced people who just wanted to work hard and make money that having them as their overlords was in their best interest, which it never was.
Working at UPS, that it taught me that working for such a big company like that is being a really hard worker actually doesn't get
pay
you further.
No.
And it doesn't pay, and it doesn't get you further in the company. What a company like that does, that's unionized, they actually treat the hardest workers like shit, give them more work to do, and get rid of the shitty workers. Like, okay, you're a shitty worker. I'm going to send you home. I'm going to give everything to this guy because he actually wants to work his ass off for whatever reason.
Oh, there's all sorts of deleterious effects from this management of large collections of employees by union leadership. I mean,
there is some good things about union, though. Like, I don't want to completely shit on union. Like, I will say one. Hold on. What do you think about this? One of the benefits about union is that they'll protect the guys that work for the company for 20, 30 years, so they don't just get laid off later on. Because, like, oh, he's making too much money, or his retirement, whatever reason that a major corporation would want to lay someone off who's been working there for like half their fucking life.
Mhm.
The union protects a lot of those guys.
Yeah, well,
And that I do think is a pro of a unionized worker, because that's a whole nother beast.
but
That a corporation can just do that to people.
But what are you basing that on? Let's say we could take an entire workforce. We're going to just create a hypothetical here, right? I'm just doing this right off the top of my head. Okay. So what do you think? If say you've got a pool of workers. Let's say you have a manufacturing plant, and it's got 1,000 employees, right? And let's say that just by the snap of a finger, we can change the average age of that entire pool to 20 to 30 years old. Now, there's nobody in that group that needs to be protected at this point in time from some undeserved separation from work in their future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all young and able-bodied, and if they, if activity at the plant declines, well, some of them will have to go and find other jobs.
Yep.
Okay. Is that kind of a situation? Would you prefer that, or would you prefer that every single person who works there gets locked into a contract through the end of their life that the company can never deal with? It becomes it just becomes a block of marble sitting on top of your arrangement, and there's nothing you can do to get out from underneath it.
I feel like if you dedicate your life to a company, you deserve to be there to the end of your contract.
That's a different relationship. Now, if the company were pledging to you that in exchange for the whole of your productive life, that they would materially take care of you till you die, that would be a different thing.
Right.
But that is nothing. That's not at all in any way related to what actually is in existence right now. Because if that's the arrangement, if that were the arrangement, then both sides have leeway to some degree or another adjust how much they're contributing to keep the whole, to maintain the integrity of the whole, that being the company and the employees. If activity at the plant drops, then people are required to work less hours, and the company may, to some degree, decrease the material the material expenditures put forth to maintain the care of the employees. But it's something that can be adjusted and whatnot. The way this collective garbage works inside these big companies now, that are able, and the employees are able to create these union environments, Well, they will just, I mean, they'll just stop working.
Hmm.
They'll just stop working and
Well,
basically put the company in a position to where it doesn't matter what the agreement is, the company's going to disappear. Now,
yeah,
that is not, in my eyes, that's just not something that can be tolerated
it's
because
not.
because on a one-to-one basis, no pair of individuals would ever agree to participate in an arrangement where one person has the ability to just destroy the entire world of the other party. That's not a value to the party being destroyed, is it? So it's something that would never take place.
Well, it takes integrity from both sides, right?
It does, and unions have none.
I mean, neither do
No, they don't.
I don't think major corporations have either. Like
Well,
I'll say this:
a major corporation has one purpose, and it's not to take care of employees.
Do you care if a major corporation loses millions of dollars?
No,
me neither.
no.
Like
companies that put themselves in positions to suffer the ill effects of changes in the environment, well, they have to take place. But there are so many little pieces that hold arrangements in these rigid orientations and these rigid structures that the changing circumstances that these structures can't tolerate them. And that's why every single argument about this kind of thing has to be reduced down to a pair of individuals dealing with each other in that way. And then it becomes obvious that nobody would ever do it.
How did unions start? Was it the mob that started unions?
I'm talking
to a
like
degree. The beginning, yeah. I think I remember watching something about that, about like the rise of unions, and it was like mafias and shit that basically you had all their gang members, working different jobs, making sure they were protected, whatnot. They could run shit.
There were basically a handful of unions that you can trace all the way back through history. You have the military, the military, the groups that compose the manpower behind the military have always dealt with the rest of the population kind of like a modern union does. They make these assertions about the should and the what's going to happen to you if we don't and all that kind of garbage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they leverage the ability to persuade people based on fear to their own benefit. To me, that's not a legitimate method of dealing with another human being. So I discard it completely because you can see the results all over the place of arrangements that are arrived at by that methodology. So you got military, stonemasons.
Okay.
I mean, the Masons are probably the single most successful group of maintaining a lineage over time next to a degree of power that people aren't even aware of, because it transferred from the ability, to make temples and stuff and stand alongside the priest class.
Mm-hmm.
And they transitioned away from the priests into the more secular political military type of approach, while at the same time maintaining the mystical nature of religious leadership. And it all comes out of the pantheons, the opposition to God, which existed from day one. I mean, Adam and Eve. Eve takes the temptation. Adam commits the sin, and then their children, one murders the other, and then from there on, it's there. The opposition to God is permanent and it never goes away, and it won't until the end. And that's been carried through by this type of thinking, and that's how you end up with people in the year 2023 making videos about the Egyptian mystery schools and trying to point out to the general population that if you go back and you look at the way they operated and the reasoning behind it, well, it's to get power from the gods.
Mm.
And the gods they're just fallen angels in opposition to God no matter what. That's the choice they made. There's no going back. You can't redeem yourself. And if you're not a man, if you're not a human, there is no savior for you. Jesus didn't die for the fallen angels. He died for us.
I never thought about that. Jesus didn't die for other gods and other angels.
Oh no. No. Oh, because Jesus is the one being opposed. He's always been there. You can see it. You can see it right away in the first chapter of Genesis. Just the way the sentences and the verses are put together. In the beginning, there was the Word. Jesus is the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's where you can see the Father, Son. It's not labeled Father and Son, but later on, especially when you get to the New Testament, they're constantly hearkening back to the Old so that people can see, yes, we want to follow Christ now because he's the one pointed to before. And those people were pointed to from before that. And it's a continuous, it's like, look forward, this is coming. And then something comes, and then there's another thing to look forward to. And you wait for that, and then it comes. And it just happens over and over and over again until we get into the contemporary period. And now there's really only one more thing to come. There hasn't been anybody of any authority to create another piece of time. We're in the last piece.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how long it'll last. But, going back to this whole public sector and the way the unions act. So you got the military, and you got the priests, and you got the craftsmen. And this is where I was trying to get to, is like, where does the modern union come from? Well, the modern union is just a descendant of the old craftsman guilds. But do you want to know what the difference is?
What's that?
The craftsman guilds, to a high degree, what they were about was leveraging the ability to do things that are productive for their own benefit. The one thing within the way they operated was the closed door approach. There are still pockets of that, like when you're talking about intelligence agencies in the nation state governments. That's very closed door. But what I mean by that is that they didn't want people outside of their circles to know the things that they knew about, whether it's, putting together all the devices that you need in a lumber mill, or, the types of material that you make your tools out if you're going to cleave certain types of rock.
Knowledge is the biggest power.
All right. These are the detailed,
for sure,
like step-by-step how-tos for material construction.
If knowledge is power, the people who have all the power right now are the guys that are really fucking good with computers. It's probably been that way for a while.
I wouldn't say knowledge in and of itself is composed of, it has to be composed of things that are true. Okay. And the only case in which power is actually, can be considered, part of truth is if you're pointing to the ultimate power.
God?
Yes. Everything subsidiary to that is an illusion. And it completely and wholly depends on God's will. Boy, that was dumb. The conclusion to be reached comes out of an additional question when we're looking at these two different scenarios, and which one actually presents itself as being a more rational thing, like inherent race hatred that has to, that forces us to be dominated by governments, or governments are actually just thieves who make their theft legal. Right now, in the West here, where the almighty election is the end all be all of everything that happens, even though it's absolutely not, and the whole damn program is already prearranged before anybody's ever elected. Imagine, right, with these two scenarios in mind, you go around and you survey the general population, and then try to imagine, like, what are the results of an election going to be when you're voting alongside people who actually think that the race hatred thing is the more rational conclusion to reach? But if you're voting with people like that, you've reduced the ability to ever solve any problem to zero. That's why I stopped voting. After Obama got reelected, I told myself I'm never voting again.
Do you think Trump's is he running again?
Oh yeah.
Think he's gonna win?
I don't think there's any doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, there's absolutely nothing that the Democrats can do at this point to actually regain. It's stupid. It's stupid to even say regain their trust because they didn't win the last election. They set up a bunch of voting machines that their agents manipulated via the internet, which none of these damn machines were supposed to be connected to in the first place. And then, in the wake of the actual process occurring, which was in no way legitimate, with all the stupid voting boxes and morons shoving 1,000 ballots in one box at one time, and all this illegitimate garbage, and then just the statistical analysis that proved it was fucking impossible for any of this to happen the way it did. And then the people who actually get prosecuted are the ones just asking the questions about what happened, as if the people who perpetrated it to prompt the questions in the first place didn't do anything. Our safest election ever. I mean, it's so dumb. And so I just, yeah.
I think if you're gonna vote, voting on a computer is the least safest way to have an election. I think the safest way to have an election, first you have to figure out a way, I don't know, to make sure you track everyone. You probably have to do that by having an ID. I don't even think you have to have that now in some states because, well, that's racist. Yeah. Wasn't there something? Was it a state or is that a national thing? I can't remember it. But if I remember correctly, there was something going on in a state where they made it so you have to have an ID to vote. Seems pretty logical. Yeah. Right? And people threw a fit saying, well, that's racist.
Well, the problem is that even in places where you have a statute like that, where ID is required, they circumvent that with other statutes that basically just grant people driver's licenses with no ability to prove that anything on the thing is true.
Right.
It's insane.
But anyway, what I was getting to, make sure you have a system where it says, okay, Doug voted. No matter where I fucking go, they know I already voted. I can't vote again. And then I write whoever's name down in a piece of paper and I stick it in a box.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, it has to be. It has to be physical.
But you also have to trust the people counting the votes too.
Yeah.
That's
there are a lot of components that
There's
have
a lot of components, a lot of integrity that's in place.
High integrity requirements across a number of functions,
which is extremely difficult because you got to think how many thousands of people are working these voting ballot stations. It's already, when I think of all the people I met in my life, I can think of a small handful that have very high integrity. Now you're trying to recruit thousands of people across the country. You're trying to find thousands of them.
Mm-hmm.
Good fucking luck.
Oh,
and most of them, and the most of people that do have high integrity probably don't want anything.
Yeah, they don't want anything to do with the election system because they know it's a scam.
Exactly.
It's gotten so bad. I mean, just watch the gangs in New York. I mean, Gangs in New York is a very well produced example of what these mechanisms are really all about. They're about presenting. They're about providing a vehicle for the absolute worst people to maintain power, because there's nothing. There's nothing in the political realm that actually demands anything of the participants, other than that you be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. And that's generally, in the sphere of lying, blackmailing, extorting, all of the things that, when you break it down to one individual interacting with another, nobody would ever agree to be in an arrangement like that with a person who behaves that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has to be a failure. It can't ever provide the intended result if you keep following this recipe.
When is someone finally going to break the wheel? Is it? I don't know if it's ever going to happen at this point.
I'm
To be honest,
that's why I try. I mean, honestly, I try to frame more and more of what I say within the context of faith because it's the only thing that's actually real. I mean, yeah, you wake up every day, you have a body, you have your senses, the table's real, the notebook's real, the beer in the can is real.
the poop is real.
But when you're talking about, I mean, all material is perishable. There are conditions somewhere that will absolutely dissolve the integrity of any material. Right? Nuclear weapon, right? You drop a nuclear bomb on something, nothing that was at the center of that detonation is what it was after the explosion. So there's no absolute material integrity anywhere. Then you turn around and turn away from the material, and you realize that there are so many things that are real that there's no material incarnation for them whatsoever. And what are those? Well, they're the gifts from God that we are actually able to understand and then apply. It's like the human being is the device through which God's will can be applied in the material world. And once you turn away from that simple, straightforward relationship, you end up with demon worshipers and legal thieves.
Then whose will are you following then?
All of this,
God's.
Satan's. Because every terrible thing that people have ever done has been a suggestion. Oh, what if you do this? I bet you can get what you want if you do that. Don't you think that you deserve more? It's all suggestion. And the worst of us use any individual's susceptibility, right? From one person to another, the level of it changes. But we're all inherently susceptible to suggestion on some level. And you have to that's like the armor of God. You have to build yourself up against the external influences that want to take advantage of that susceptibility. And that's refusal to take place or to take part in the things that are contrary to the things that are obviously objectively true. Those are the elements of God's will that we can make manifest in the material world. And that's how going back to the Mises and Rothbard and Hoppe and everything that these guys have expounded upon, it's not about observing how a plant produces a widget and how many dollars can we sell it for, and then how many does it cost us to make it, and this minus that equals It's not about any of that. It's about conforming the way in which you will interact with other human beings to those truths. And now just imagine how hard it is for a person who's been raised to look at the world like a giant, ball of cookie dough, which is, the collective. And inside that thing, you're a chocolate chip, or you're a chunk of walnut or whatever.
Yep.
And we're floating around in this massive collectivism. How in the world could you ever get from that to an objective truth that comes from God? You can't. No, we got to shape it this way. No, we got to flatten it that way. No, we got to bake it at this temperature. No, we need this many chocolate chips. Oh no, some of those chips are the wrong color. I mean, you're in an infinite merry-go-round of lies if you start with the collective. The only way to gird yourself against evil is to understand that you're an individual with the ability to understand and to know that there are objectively true things, and they apply first, primarily on the individual to individual level, and then their effects can be extrapolated out into a population, but the mechanism always has to reduce to one person and another person.
And the ability to think for yourself too, because I feel like the
Oh, now you see,
the amount of people that the thing is, here's the sad thing about it. Everyone can obviously think for themselves, but a majority of people choose not to because it's easier to have someone make the decision for you.
no, I don't think see. Are you familiar with the Beatitudes?
I am not.
Okay, so it's blessed are the X, for they will Y, right? And there's a list of them in the Bible.
Okay.
I can't quote them all, but I know that one of them is blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will inherit the earth. And there's another passage in there that says, the poor will always be with you. Right. And it's an instruction to a person of influence. I can't remember the name. I can't remember exactly who it is, but I know it's in there. And I'm pretty certain that I have a good interpretation of it. I don't think that it's so much making a reference to material wealth as it is making a direct reference to the amount of investment that any particular person has made in the pursuit of understanding those objective truths.
Becoming morally rich.
Yeah,
not financially rich.
And I would say that the overwhelming majority of people they're not in and of them, they're not capable. And even for the ones who are capable, it's not anything of themselves. They didn't generate that ability for themselves. That's a gift that they received. And the ones that actually do it and accomplish it and try to share what they've understood with other people, they've accepted the gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, like, all of our people who are in authority now, almost without exception, there's almost nowhere you can look to a hierarchy anywhere on earth now and find a person of integrity. That's probably the single most exceptional thing you can find, other than the human calculators, the ones that can multiply 7-digit numbers in their head and shit like that.
Those people have a little bit of autism.
Oh, I hate that word. Oh God, it's another one of these stupid catch-all, mind-bending nonsense words that these people have created.
Oh, he can remember what he had for dinner 2 years ago. He must be autistic.
No, he just has a good memory. I mean, there have been people who are, who either isolate themselves or become isolated because they're not capable of ever generating an awareness of, like, their effects in social situations. That's just unfortunate.
Yeah.
But the idea that these doctors are actually diagnosing anything and that anything that they're pointing out is at all useful, I give it very little credit. It doesn't matter what environment you're in. If you shuffle enough people through it, you're going to find people that don't fit in that environment every time. So if that's the measure, then people who aren't good at math, they're autistic in a math class. Right? Like me. Me in a room full of people speed dating, I'm autistic in a speed dating thing. Right? You can construct examples like that infinitely. That's why a label like autism is almost entirely useless. You know what it does is it creates a banner for hysterical revolutionaries to carry around to get their way by convincing people that unless a political authority forces everybody to do something, that there's going to be some awful negative effect in the future. And yet the only thing we ever actually observe taking place are politicians making false cases and then implementing policy that increase suffering. It's basically all they do. And if you ever actually make an observation where a general, a population of people actually improve their circumstance, it can always be demonstrated that it was done despite the powers that be. It's the only reason that the political structuring of the United States exists is because the people who did it actually made an attempt to shed the order that they were forced to comply with for centuries beforehand. They found a new place to set up shop, and it created something new. Didn't end up actually really being new. It's just a bunch of new words and labels on positions to make it seem like you weren't
you have to
bowing.
learn all over
Yeah,
again
you weren't bowing to
from
a bunch of people making claims to divine right and all that stupid garbage. Because there's only one divine right. That's Christ. Everybody else is just a person running their mouth, making claims to power that aren't true.
Dude, watching you go speed dating would be internet gold. Like, imagine if we could set that up where we had a camera and a mic and we just have a bunch of people come in and speed date you.
Well, you know what?
I would love that.
We could create a simulation, and basically I just sit across a table and you just drop mannequins on trampolines. You just drop them out of the ceiling.
And then we'll use Chat GPT to pretend that it's speed dating someone.
Oh God. I can't think of a worse thing to do. I mean, honestly.
Well, we could get real women in there instead of mannequins and AI.
Well, you know what? I give you the go. If you think, if you and anybody else in the podcast circle here thinks that would be entertaining,
I think it'd be amazing. I would love to see it. And who knows? Maybe you find the one.
I mean, I can't get a date outside of that, so it's not like
to try.
It's not like I'm going to be able to recruit a bunch of women to do it.
Exactly. That's funny.
I have a hard time believing that there's even a woman alive that would even be willing to have a conversation with me at this point.
Oh, she's out
because their minds are all their minds are all so polluted with this contemporary garbage.
There's woke ones out there like you, Philly. You just got to find them.
I shit you not, dude. Last winter, I was just having we've got a group of ladies who participate in our leagues at X Golf, and one night, they're all 2 or 3 glasses into their
so they're feeling good
into their good time, playing league golf, and I just made the statement. I mean, just a general exchange that men and women are different. And holy shit, they almost lynched me right in the middle of the damn store. They all lost their shit.
Dude, that was just the wrong group of women then.
No,
my fiance knows that men and women are different.
Well, good God, for your sake, I should hope so. Good Lord.
And a lot of other women know that men and women are different also.
I'd like to believe it, but boy, they certainly.
You just got a bad batch, dude.
They certainly
got a bad batch.
As a group, the degree.
Well, you're gonna hang out with like-minded people. So you gotta think they're really all the same person. So,
as a group, women have done an absolutely piss poor job of policing themselves. I could tell you that much. They have allowed. Not only that, not just allow, but they have actually promoted it to their own descendants to a degree that is it's absolutely destructive. I mean, it's so weird. Now, and this is making me think of this little James Lindsay piece that I came across over the past couple weeks. The title of it is "The Current Thing Didn't Happen."
The current thing didn't happen.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. Okay. So you get a sense of something going on, and you see some reports in the news or whatever, and you just going forward. Anybody who hears this, you simply have to understand that whatever people are having an hysterical reaction to in the media, it's simply an issue to draw people's attention away from what they're actually doing. COVID was not about public health. It was about the exercise of arbitrary government power. Black Lives Matter was not about the well-being of black people. It was about generating political divides for the purposes of the collectivization of everything. whatever's being presented is never actually the thing.
It's never the
So
truth.
now we have multiple generations of young women who live in just simply the best material circumstances that human beings have ever managed to establish for themselves. And they think that life for women has just always been horrible. They actually think that. And they actually believe that the nonsense being filtered through the pop culture and everything, they think that these are all incremental adjustments and movements forward towards something better. They have absolutely no ability to conceptualize when you know when the overlords, these people in the shadows who are always feeding garbage into the media to distract everybody,
Mm-hmm.
that when they came up with this idea of women's suffrage, it's like 90% of women have wanted nothing to do with it. So how do you square that in the mind of a young woman today who thinks that things have just always been terrible for women? The women who were alive at that point in time, they understood that, okay, we we can look back even at recent history, because the 19th century in the United States, there were I'm sure there were a high number of individual circumstance where the political structures that existed simply didn't have any exceptions for, say, a farmer with an appreciable sized piece of land
Mm-hmm.
and a going concern as far as business relationships with, distributors or whatever that they sold their crops to, in a daughter. They only had a daughter. There was no son to pick up the inheritance. So if the father, the owner of the farm, dies, there were no exceptions to be made within the law to allow either the spouse or the daughter to take over title. Title had to be held by a man.
Right.
Now, those protests had substance, and those were things
That needed to be changed.
those were beneficial changes.
Absolutely.
And the idea, and the crazy thing is that those things started to get overturned. Were women voting?
I would imagine at least some did.
No, I'm talking about before women's suffrage.
Oh, okay.
All these situations, and what they've done is they've they've amplified and magnified those individual tragic circumstances where female individuals were denied common sense
Yeah.
steps towards, resolving situations, mostly to do with property and money. And those were the only things that needed to be overturned. There weren't any women that could vote on these things. Men took it upon themselves to say, okay, we're looking at this is a ridiculous situation
Mm-hmm.
where these women are being forced to go and bring in sometimes a man they don't even know, and simply having to trust that guy because he's the vessel that can carry the legal dictate to keep them connected to their property or the money that was left vacant as far as ownership when the man at the head of their family died. Nobody today would ever say, no, you know what? We should go back to a time when women couldn't work and women couldn't own land and women couldn't have money and they couldn't work a job and blah, 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 blah. Just wasn't
Nobody would
that's
say
just
that.
it's so absolutely nonsensical. And yet those are the exact accusations you get from the people, the magic makers, the overlords in the shadows, filling the media with distracting garbage. They're the ones that will come out and accuse you of wanting to go back to that.
Mm-hmm.
When obviously there was a period of time where men were making the adjustments in favor of women so they didn't end up in these tragic circumstances, and the women didn't need to vote. They couldn't. So what was women's suffrage actually about?
And who ended women's suffrage?
Well, nobody ended it. Women's suffrage is the right to vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy because women in general at the time, they still had the sense of God's order, right? And you can go on about this particular item until you're blue in the face with these people. They will never accept what you're saying. They'll just tell you that you're a liar, even though you're presenting it absolutely straightforward, as honestly and by the letter as you possibly can. Because there are biblical passages that point to God's order, and part of that is God loves the Son, and the Son loves man, and the real direction of love for us as far as human beings here, it has to go upwards
Mhm.
to God. Children love their mother, the mother loves the husband, and as long as the husband loves Christ, the harmony can be maintained.
Yeah.
As soon as you turn this into the husband, and the husband loves the wife and the wife loves the husband, and well, no, that thing in the law says this, therefore that's not true. And it just
You
turns
cut
into
off the flow.
yeah,
It becomes an open
it
circuit.
turns into an absolute bickering fest, right? So that's the importance of the order. And God dictated it to us this way. God, Christ, man, woman, child. That's it. It's very straightforward. And as long as you can accept that, you can operate in a way that is compliant with those absolute truths. As soon as you start making these claims in the schools that kids can make the decision to, chop their goods off. That's as demonic as it gets,
Yeah.
because the children have absolutely no capacity whatsoever to make a decision like that for themselves looking into the future. It's pure abuse. And then the same thing with the nanny state making the claims to women that they don't need the fathers of their children in the house. I don't know why. Why would anybody ever make an argument like that for any reason? Well, it can only be to destroy people. And who wants to destroy people?
The overlords?
The adversary and his agents, whether they be the pantheons of the old gods in the Far East and in Africa and in Greece and all over the frickin' place, whether it be that or any other multitude of examples. It's just it's just an obsession with opposition to what they refuse to accept. And that's the result. That's the result of persons, whether they be supernatural or material, in the material world like we are. Anything with a will has the opportunity to do that, and it all boils down to choice.
Do you choose to love God? Do you choose to love someone else?
Well,
Maybe you choose to love another
I could tell you one thing. I loved my parents, and I was extremely fortunate to have one of the best pairs of parents anybody could have possibly asked for. And the fact that my mom raised us Catholic, went to Catholic school all the way through high school. Our exposure to sexual education was very biologically formulaic, with no injection from the pop culture, feel good plastic banana rock and roller view of how things are. So for me, finding a wife and to live to live a life with somebody with the potential to have I took that very seriously. So
I wish I took that more seriously, to be honest.
all the girls that I thought that I was making an attempt to pursue when I was younger, well, none of them even took it as I was pursuing them.
Of course not.
So when when you're in an environment like
you
that,
didn't probably show that you sexually desired them in the first 2 minutes of meeting them. So how would they know?
well, and the crazy thing is that my generation to your generation to the kids that are now 10 years younger than you, the ones in their early 20s, right? it's just gotten worse with each step. And these girls, they go through they put themselves in the cycle earlier, they stay in it longer, and they come out even more destroyed now than when I was young. It's amplifying, it's magnifying, it's covering more. They get to the end of, getting themselves ran through, and basically they've made themselves incapable of even being,
being able to love
pair bonding.
man.
They can't do it. They've actually their body will now physically reject the scenario, and that's why they can't be with anybody, because they threw away the ability so early that it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's not a singular evaluation that only applies there. You can do it in any aspect of life. I mean, you read in bad lighting too much. Well, eventually you won't be able to read anything.
Right.
Right? You go out to raves and do too many chemicals. I mean, you put yourself through that cycle often enough within a period of time. If you stretch that out long enough, you won't be able to feel anything
Right.
by the time you're done ruining yourself. I mean,
even just doing it once, dude, it took me like a week to feel normal again.
That's everywhere. Now, isn't it odd that this approach bounced from thing to thing, right in it, just in lockstep with the political shenanigans and the media manipulation and the wars and the military actions and the abuse of the money, and it all just ramps. It's all correlating together. And oh God, we're building a better world. Oh God, it's so fucking stupid. Oh man.
Maybe you and me can help build a better world together, Philly. Maybe these podcasts will do something in the future. Who knows? Maybe they won't do it.
Well, and that's that's the one driver, right? Is that there's all of this capacity for keeping all of this, all of these videos and all these audio recordings and all the stuff that people are writing in it. It can be stored and looked at. You can look back at it for basically
hopefully
forever.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of these little slivers will break through
and make somebody woke.
And hopefully, like me finding the Mises books.
Someone will find Professor Phil.
When I did. I mean, if I had never run into that stuff, I mean, I don't know.
Weird how, like, when you think about one tiny decision, how different your life would be. Like, you're talking about how different of a person you would be if you never discovered Mises.
Yeah.
Think of how different you would be. It really trips me out how when I reflect back on my life, if I went left instead of right there, if I picked this up instead of picking that up, how different of a person I would be. And it also makes me wonder what my life would look like. I don't know if it'd be better. I don't know if it'd be worse.
Well, I can make one assertion that I think is pretty solid. I think that my material circumstance would be probably 10 to 50 times what it is right now, because I would have never run into I would have never had the ability to present myself with any argument against pursuing money. But at the same time, I might not ever even think about God.
Right.
And I think that, my lifestyle generally of relative poverty, I mean, I'm not in poverty, but I don't make a lot of money. I never have. And I maintain my lifestyle with very low means. I don't really have any part of my life that's extravagant. I mean, the closest I can even think of recently, okay, I have a vehicle lease, right?
Ooh.
Wow. Yeah. On a Jeep Cherokee. Yeah. Oh my God.
It's a nice Jeep.
This guy is a giant hypocrite.
It's a nice Jeep.
At 44 years old, it was the first vehicle I drove off a lot with less than 100 miles on it. The closest I had gotten before that was a vehicle my sister bailed on. She had my dad help her with co-signing the loan. Mm-hmm. She had to bail on it, and he gave her the car I was driving, and I took over the payments on the new one.
Okay.
And that was fun. That was in 2000, I think. So I would have been 23 at that time.
Jeez.
And then after that, I just went from used car to used car. I never even thought about buying a new car. And now I've been
There's
living
no need to buy a new
and
one.
now I've been living in a $20,000 mobile home for 14
Fuck
years.
yeah.
I can't even conceive of chasing a dollar for any reason anymore. I mean, even if I met the love of my life, I'm not certain that I would actually be able to modify my life to
financially support her.
greatly increase my income.
Yeah. You would have to if you wanted kids, probably.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
that's just the reality of it. Like,
yeah, and if I were, I guess that if I am blessed enough to have that happen in the next handful of years, because
you'd be willing to
if
do
I
it.
get to 50,
Mhm.
that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm 46.
Or speed dating, we'll try to make it happen.
I mean,
we'll
good
try to make
grief.
the speed dating
I mean,
episode
at
happen in
46,
the next few years.
even if I had a kid today, I'd be 64 when they graduate high school, if I even make it that far. So it's kind of a bummer. But you know what? I don't remember any commandments about making sure that you get enough by any means necessary to be happy.
Right.
There's no commandment like that. And so if you make that the center of your life, you're obviously lacking in major applications of truths.
Mhm.
You're denying truths to yourself and the people around you on a constant basis. And the single best way I've tried to develop in that vein is through the Mises stuff.
Yep.
Like, we can look at a structure, and if you operate within it at a particular level, you're acting against the better interests of everybody below you. Now, that's not ever what anybody is called to do. God doesn't call people to take advantage of everybody around them for their own benefit. So when you see entities that take advantage of legal structures and the way the government abuses the money, and they do this for their own benefit, regardless of the results, that has to be called out.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to share the good news, if you want to try and be honest with people, you have to. The truths themselves are so simple and straightforward. It's basically the 10 Commandments and Jesus Christ in the Gospels,
That's it.
right? And you just take those and then apply them at the ground level of whatever operating environment you're talking about in the material world that we live in here on earth. And if you start, pointing your gaze up the structure, and you just see it, it's so obvious that there are very fundamental, rudimentary, easy to understand characteristics of relationships between individual people that are being violated by the way these things are constructed. That you have to call it out. And there's so much fear and way too much comfort. And that combination has allowed
It's just set to have people rot their life away.
Yeah, well, and the real misery of it for me, looking at it from the inside, right? I mean, because we're all in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Individual structures, you're on the outside, and you're trying to analyze it from the outside looking in. It's these scenarios, they're gathering up more and more of the space of all existence, that there are just huge numbers of people who, like we said earlier, not everybody is of a high capacity for recognition of these immaterial concepts and whatnot. And so they need guidance. Yet almost all of the people who are capable of providing it are buying into the structures that deny it to the ones who can't. And so you're just watching, like, all of these poor little kids in these public schools. It does. I mean, I'm just sitting here and I can actually feel myself about to produce a tear. All I have to do is just think about like 5 to 10-year-olds in public schools and just think how tragic
How
it
fucked they
really
are.
is.
Yeah.
The idea that I would have ever been confronted with a 350-pound former professional wrestler in a thong thrusting his hog in my face before I'm 10 years old, to read me a book about about how some kid has, 2 gay guys for parents. That is just that is such an abomination to me. And I do. That's just how
That's just
I
that's the
kind of
world we
feel
live in
like
these
it.
days.
Yeah, it's just a constant state of prayer.
Yeah.
God, please have mercy on the souls of all of these people who were never given a chance to understand any of this.
Well, hopefully you all understand a little bit more after listening to this podcast here. Phil, I think it's time to wrap it up, man. It's a good spot
God,
to
I
end it.
really just went.
We almost did a whole
on
nother
and
hour
on.
just there,
Good
dude.
grief.
I thought we were going to just do like another 20 minutes.
Oh, God.
But it's all good. I liked it.
Yeah,
It was fun.
We
It was a fun
definitely
time.
had enough. That was a good spot to cut it off there.